What happens to dead Primarchs? Can they be reborn or do they stay dead? Well, here in this video we will explore into what happens to the demigods, the sons of the Emperor, when they get smoked. It isn't as simple as dying for most humans, that's for sure. So if you're curious, let's get into it. To begin to have even the slightest idea or understanding of this, we have to first dive into what the warp is really about, and what is its relation to souls and sentience. Now, it is also called the Immaterium or the Sea of Souls. It is a parallel dimension made of entirely of psychic energy. It isn't made of matter, space or time, the way the real universe is. Instead, it is a vast ocean of raw emotion, thoughts and instincts given form and shape. And so souls and the warp are inseparable, because souls are the substance that makes up the warp itself. So what happens when a being dies? Let's say a human. Well, naturally, as you might expect, its soul returns to the warp because the warp is the natural destination, the final destination, the home dimension of all spiritual energy. It's not really the afterlife that you would desire or imagine, as you would, like many ordinary souls, simply dissolve back into the sea, becoming indistinguishable from the collective psychic substance around. Or, in many cases, they are taken by demons and warp entities to torture for all eternity. Some, like those claimed by the Chaos Gods, are absorbed into the power of those entities instead of fading away. Rarer still are souls protected by special rituals, gods or technologies, which can prevent them from being consumed. But, in general, death means the souls return to the Immaterium, where it either disperses into the endless psychic ocean, or it is shaped by whatever forces take hold of it. Now, coming to the topic at hand, what really are Primarchs, and how did the Emperor create them? The sons of the Emperor, the Primarchs, are genetically engineered super beings created by the Emperor as living demigods, as leaders and generals, meant to lead the greatest armies in human history. They are not just strong humans, but immensely powerful entities that combine biological perfection, psychic essence, and an imprint of the Emperor's own genius. Each Primarch embodies a different aspect of humanity and the Emperor, and they were intended to be the Emperor's perfect sons, not merely soldiers but leaders, capable of shaping civilizations, commanding armies and inspiring entire worlds, and to be the future of humanity. The Emperor created the Primarchs using genetic engineering, arcane technology and warp-derived power. Their creation involved combining his own genome, well, a little bit altered, with that of the perpetual order, and then accelerating their growth inside advanced gestating pods on Terra. According to multiple sources, including the Eldar, the Emperor also drew on forbidden warp knowledge possibly learned at the portal of Molech, and maybe this was the pact that he made with the Chaos Gods and why they are really mad at him. And with this knowledge, he infused each Primarch with psychic energies or metaphysical archetypes, which is tied to the aspects of humanity. Eldari sources and demonic entities both confirm that warp forces were used in the process, so whether the Emperor intended it or not, it's really up to debate. So the Primarchs are a fusion of genetic mastery, perpetual biology, Emperor tier psychic engineering and warp imprinting. These beings are not really fully warp entities, but they are partially warp-based beings. They are not demons, nor are they made purely of psychic energy, but their souls and personalities are shaped by powerful metaphysical forces. You can think of them like hybrids, biologically perfect bodies with souls and psychic signatures that burn far brighter than normal humans, and they are infused with aspects or archetypes the Emperor deliberately built into them. This is why some Primarchs have supernatural abilities like Curze's visions or Sanguinius' foresight and Magnus's godlike psychic powers. They are beings whose biology is tied directly to the concepts of humanity, making them more than flesh and blood, yet not quite demons either. They are also functionally or biologically immortal, but not invincible. Their biology prevents natural aging. They regenerate far faster than any human, or even the Astartes, and they can survive wounds that would kill anything else. However, they can be killed through sheer destructive force and powerful weapons. And so here we come to the crux of the topic. What happens to these powerful demigods after they die? Let us explore the fates of each one of them, at least the ones that are dead, and also the ones that were close to death. Let's get into it. Well, naturally, we first have to take a look at Vulkan. He is unique among the Primarchs because he possesses the rare mutant gift of true perpetuality. While all Primarchs heal incredibly fast and are effectively ageless, Vulkan goes so far beyond this that his body and soul regenerates from any level of destruction, even total annihilation. He was once killed so completely that his body was reduced to atoms, yet he still returned. Vulkan did not know that he was immortal until the Dropsite massacre, when an orbital nuclear strike should have killed him forever, but instead triggered his first true resurrection. Unlike other Primarchs who can be slain by enough force, Vulkan's soul and body is tied forever to the material universe and cannot really die, but his ultimate fate remains one of the greatest open mysteries till now, because after the Horus heresy, he did lead the Legion, the Salamanders, for quite a while, but then departed on a mission that he never really explained, leaving behind only the Tome of Fire, cryptic prophecies, and 9 sacred artifacts scattered across the galaxy. And according to the tome, the book, Vulkan will return only when all 9 are recovered, proving the chapter was truly mastering his ideals. It is safe to say that as a perpetual, he is still alive somewhere, but why he hasn't returned is a matter of debate, and Vulkan is unique amongst all other Primarchs in that he can never die, so his soul is stuck in the universe. Now let's go on to the first Primarch who was killed, Ferrus Manus. He was the Primarch of the 10th Legion, the Iron Hands, and was killed by Fulgrim, the Primarch of the Emperor's children during the Isvan Dropsite massacre, beheaded by the traitor. So you'd think that he would be gone for good, right? But nay, cause during the war in the Webway, when the Master of Mankind finally took to the battlefield to confront the demons assailing his warriors, many of the dead that were killed there rose up again, as if by divine magic. They were resurrected for a while to battle the ruinous powers for one last time, and amongst them was Ferrus Manus. The book states this: the fire-born avatars of fallen 10,000, knee-deep in psychic fire and thrusting with lances of flame. The silhouettes of space marines, the betrayed dead of Isvan bearing axes and blades and claws, half-seen sigils of slaughtered legions obscured by the ash of their blackened armor. A giant amongst giants, its great hands bared and ready as it seared forwards at the crest of the tidal fire, the 10th son of a dying empire, so briefly reborn in his father's immolating wrath. So it is unknown if the Emperor got a hold of his dead son's soul in the warp after the Isvan massacre, but it was clear that at least a psychic avatar of Ferrus Manus was conjured up in the Webway to assist the Emperor in battling back the demons of chaos there. Now next is a little bit mysterious. Here we have Alpharius and Omegon. They are the most unusual and mysterious of all the Primarchs, cause they're not just twins, as they are essentially one Primarch split into 2 bodies. Whether this was intentional or a warp anomaly during their creation is unknown, but their existence is unlike anything else in Imperial biology or in the Emperor's genetic design. They share one soul, one psychic essence, and one Primarch identity, divided between the 2 genetically identical bodies. This is why they speak about themselves as one being. The biggest unanswered question is whether the Emperor intended for the last Primarch to be a Hydra, a being of many heads, or if the warp itself caused this duplication. The twins themselves did not know the truth and openly debated this, and whether they were originally a single being or they were naturally 2. This uncertainty matches their entire theme. Nothing about them is ever fully known. So when Alpharius was killed by Dawn in the Battle of Pluto, Omegon, who was far away in another system, actually felt the soul explode, and he finally felt alone for the first time in his existence. Now here, half of the soul is definitely back in the warp, but the other half is still in Omegon's body, and whether or not the living half can re-merge with the slain half is to be seen. But as it is with the Alpha Legion, this is just one of the many theories, enigmas, and mysteries. Now next, let's take a look at Horus Lupercal, who met a fate unlike any other Primarch, that of complete and irreversible annihilation. See, by the time of the final duel on the Vengeful Spirit, he was no longer just a Primarch. He had become the chosen champion of the vessel of all the 4 Chaos Gods, empowered far beyond mortal comprehension. He crushed Sanguinius, and for a brief time, he even overpowered the Emperor himself, ripping off the Emperor's right arm and destroying one of his eyes. But luckily, when the Emperor got a break, and then he saw that Horus's soul was completely twisted and that no spark of his son remained, he made the most terrible decision possible. Calling upon all his psychic power from the warp, the Emperor unleashed a blast of warp energy so absolute that it not only destroyed Horus's body, but erased his soul from existence. This destruction was total. It wasn't death or banishment or even the kind of spiritual scattering that happens to most mortal souls or even demons. It was obliteration, the deliberate burning away of Horus's entire essence across both the materium and the immaterium. The cursed gods could not save him, nor could they possess him or could reform him again. The ruinous powers had invested everything into him, and in that moment the Emperor severed their claim forever. Horus then left behind no spirit, no demon form, no echo in the warp, nothing. Horus's ultimate fate was that he suffers a true and final death, a deletion. So that is what happens to the War Master. But what about the Angel? We should deliberate a little bit more on this. Sanguinius, unlike all other Primarchs who lived like there was no tomorrow, was blessed or cursed with the gift of foresight, much like one of his brothers, Konrad Curze, who also shared a similar ordeal. He knew that death was coming for him in one way or another, but decided to face it with honor and sacrifice. During the Siege of Terra, after defeating both Kabanda and Angron, Sanguinius, along with many others, teleported to the Vengeful Spirit to confront Horus. Even though he was way better than Horus in battle, that is, with Horus not unleashing the powers of the ruinous powers inside of him, Sanguinius was eventually slain and broken and battered by Horus when the War Master decided that turning the Angel to his side was impossible, and therefore his full powers was unleashed against the Primarch of the Ninth. When Sanguinius died at the hands of Horus, his soul did not simply vanish into the warp like mortals. As a Primarch, his soul was immense, radiant, and deeply imprinted on reality, but his soul carried two halves. One half had its nobility, compassion, and purity, and the other had its rage, curse, and doomed visions. In the Talon of Horus novel, the psychic reflection of Sanguinius' soul at his death appears in the planning room of the Vengeful Spirit, which means at least a part of it is stuck in that horrible place. And in the devastation of Baal, it is theorized that it is Sanguinius himself who was talking to Dante as the Sanguinor. The Sanguinor is widely believed to embody the pure, untainted golden half of Sanguinius' soul as the part that resisted corruption, the part that inspired loyalty, the part that carried the Emperor's light even unto death. This better half continued to exist in the warp not as a demonic presence but as an empiric echo of Sanguinius' heroism and idealism. The existence of the Black Angel, the opposite force, strengthens this interpretation. The Black Angel is the psychic embodiment of everything dark within the sons of Baal, within Sanguinius himself, the black rage, the inherited trauma of Sanguinius' death at the hands of Horus. Thus, the Sanguinor may not be Sanguinius reborn, nor a preserved hero like Ascalon, or a mere psychic construct. He is most likely the surviving purified shard of Sanguinius' soul, sustained by the devotion and deeds of the Blood Angels, manifesting to protect his sons in the darkest moments. So it might be so that due to the manner of his death at the hands of Horus empowered by the Chaos Gods, the soul of Sanguinius might be shattered into many shards, into many parts, one that is an echo in the Vengeful Spirit, another embodying his honor as the Sanguinor, the other as an echo of the Black Rage, and even a part of it stuck in the warp. So now, moving on from that tragic fate, now let's take a look at Konrad Curze's death, whose end is one that unfolded exactly as how the Primarch himself foresaw it. After the Horus heresy, Curze retreated to Sagualsa, increasingly tormented by the same prophetic visions that had guided and cursed his entire life. When the Calidus assassin M'Shen infiltrated his fortress, Curze was already seated upon his throne, waiting. He did not resist, he did not activate his preternatural reflexes, nor did he summon the Night Lords for defense or draw a weapon. He explained that he chose not to stop her not because he couldn't, because he easily could, but because her blade would prove his life's philosophy true. Unlike Horus, Curze was not obliterated from existence. Unlike Sanguinius, he felt no sanely echo, nor was he scattered apart. Unlike Guilliman or the Lion, he had no completely intact body for resurrection. Not that he wanted to. Probably like Manus, he exists in the warp as a shadow of his former self, not dissolved like other mortal souls, but with a stronger essence floating around somewhere. Now lastly, we also see that Primarchs can survive near-death states for millennia because their souls and bodies are fundamentally different from those of ordinary humans. A normal human soul begins to dissolve into the warp almost immediately after death, becoming a part of the Sea of Souls unless protected or claimed. But a Primarch is a being engineered by the Emperor using impossible biology and technology. This means that even when their bodies are mortally wounded or placed in stasis, the soul remains attached, unable to drift into the warp the same way a human soul would. This is why Rebooted Gilliman could remain on the edge of death for 10,000 years in stasis field. His body was frozen at the moment of Fulgrim's killing strike, but his soul did not depart. Once Belisarius called and the Eldar encased the Primarch inside the armor of fate, the Primarch's soul immediately rejoined him, completely intact, because it had never really actually left. In other words, stasis preserved the body, but it is the Emperor's making that held the soul in place. The situation of Lionel Johnson is similar but a little bit stranger. While his physical form lay wounded and dormant deep within the rock, his soul remained bound to it, unable to pass fully into the warp or truly die. Instead, his consciousness drifted into the metaphysical mirror Caliban, a liminal psychic reflection which is shaped by memory, identity, and the warped shadows of old Caliban. When the lion's body finally healed enough and the moment of return came, his soul snapped back into full alignment, restoring the Primarch as a complete and unified being. But this wasn't without help. There was the old king in the forest who guided the lion through the ordeal. And this was, of course, as you would expect, an essence of the Emperor. Anyway, with that we come to the end of the video, and I hope you're more enlightened about the nature of the Primarchs after this and what happens to them when they die. Now do hit the like button for support, and also for the ones holding their phones in their hands, do hit that hype option to push this content further. Subscribe to be a part of Legion Notebug, and till the next time, take care, boys.